Hello there, this is Welsh ASMR 82. Hey, how you doing? So in today's video, I'm just going to talk you through how the coefficiency works within Europe. Some of you have asked in the past for sort of how-to videos or beginner videos on how the system all works and how leagues work and relegation and promotion and European spots work. So this is something that I'm particularly versed in. I'm quite confident in talking about it. So I'm using FM23 to explain it a little bit more visually. I hope you enjoy the video. Let me know if you found it useful, or if I missaid something, please correct me in the comment section as well. Okay, so I'm talking from my knowledge, but it doesn't mean that I'm completely right. So do check the comments in case I said something wrong. Okay, so within the context of European continental football, so Champions League, Europa League and Conference League, any team that enters that competition gets points every time they get a draw or a win. And those points change from the qualifying round into the main stage, and they might change again when you get to the knockouts, but I'm not quite sure on that bit. So if we look, for example, at England, who are ranked first in this save, which I'm in 2023. So yeah, in the season 2018-2019, all of the clubs in all of the European competitions got a total of 22.642 points. So if you imagine something like a win is 1 point, then you got like 22 wins, for example. Because most of the English teams don't go through qualifying, so that sort of is out of it. And I think you get more for winning it as well. So I think 2020, 2021 maybe was a very good year for English clubs. In real life, obviously, was it 2023, 24 when Man City won the Champions League? Or was it the year before? I can't remember. That would have been a bit of a weird year for them to win it, 21 points. Anyway, so then it adds up the last 5 years. Or was it 6 years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I thought it was 5. Maybe wrong. Oh yes, no, because there's nothing happened this year. So the last 5 years and this current year, and they were in August, so there's no matches played yet because, again, they don't enter qualifying very early, whereas these teams, for example, Turkish teams, are already in qualifying and have won a couple of matches. So it works out the coefficiency for the next, so that's the total of the last 6 years, or 5 years I think, it doesn't include this one, and then the coefficiency ranking that's going to be in the next year. So I think it's like, I think they do it as in like, they let you know what it's going to be. So I think it is for the last 5 years, so it does this year, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So next year's coefficiency will not have this 22 in it. So then you could, for example, work out if you're going to get more European spaces or fewer. So I can see, for example, there's going to be no massive changes, but it does look like Germany and Italy are going to swap in 2024, 2025, depending on what happens in this year. So we might have Italy going up to 3rd spot, for example. And this got all of the nations in Europe, including all the way down to bottom where we see my lovely Wales and San Marino. Liechtenstein is a bit of a weird one. It doesn't have its own league, it just has a cup. Well, that's important because we'll see what happens in a second with that. So you can see that San Marino teams have got 0.666, that's a bit of a devil number, over the last 5 or 6 years, however it is. Okay, so that is a bit of a snapshot of how these numbers are created and what they mean and how they change. And we need to know them because they designate the qualification spots. So it's slightly changed in the last year, but at the point of this 2022-2023, I think I'm in the 2023-2024 season here, then England get 4 group stage slots for the Champions League. This is the old format Champions League at this point in the game. So do Spain, so do Germany, so do Italy. And currently France has got 3 group stage spots and a league path. The Netherlands just behind with 2 in the group stage and 1 in the league path for qualifying, this is. So this is the group stage and then these are the qualifying stages. So we can see if you're at the top, basically you don't have to qualify and you just get 4 teams straight into the group stage. However, if you are down here, for example, if you are Republic of Ireland, you do get 1 Champions League spot, but it comes in the Champions Path first qualifying round. So basically you have to start qualifying in like July, maybe even June, which is okay for Republic of Ireland because they're in mid-season at that point. Equally, I want to talk about Liechtenstein because I said it doesn't have a league, so it doesn't get a Champions League spot. However, it does do a cup. Now, I believe Liechtenstein's teams play in the Swiss leagues, off the top of my head. I think Vaduz qualified for Europe one year via the Swiss spots. Anyway, so they get 1 Europa Conference League place for the cup winner. So they play their teams in the Swiss league, which I believe they can use to qualify for Europe, but most of them are in the lower leagues, apart from Vaduz. But in this instance, they do have a cup, and the winner of that cup qualifies for the Conference League, but that's the maximum. I think they used to qualify for the Europa League, but nowadays it's the Conference League. We can see, for example, Wales down the bottom here with San Marino. 1 Champions League spot starting the very beginning, the first preliminary round, which is the worst 4. Now Wales has recently gone up to about here-ish because of TNS's brilliant campaign this year. That 1 win making all the difference, it really did. But at this point in the game, we're in the preliminary round of the Champions League. No Europa League spots at all, and 2 Conference League spots. So the Europa League starts around here, around 32nd, where Armenia is, where they get, what's that saying? Yeah, they just get into the Europa League, I think that, yeah, okay. Why is it? I don't understand why Europa League is there, and why it's there as well. Doesn't explain it very well. But anyway, so that's kind of how it works. So you can find a nation like Ukraine. You can see that they get 1 spot for Champions League, and that their team enters, the champion of that country enters in the 2nd qualifying round. So they have to win about 3 games to get into the group stage. They get 1 Europa League spot. I think that's for the cup winner. I think all the cup winners get 1 in these particular countries. I think that's what this column is for. And then they get 2 going into the Conference League, but they go into the 2nd qualifying round, and they have got to win like 2 games to get in. probably 3 games to get into the league phase. So if I am in Turkey, I get 1 in the league path. So that's this team that comes 2nd in the league. They're separated from, let's see if it, oh no, I pressed the wrong thing. They are separated from, let me go out and come back in because I've messed it up. So that's another important thing. If you are champions of a particular league, you get a slightly easier trip or ticket into the group stage, because what we don't want to happen is that's what I need to do. We don't want the champions of Turkey, who have won their league, hoping to play Champions League football. We don't want them playing, for example, the 4th best team in France, because that doesn't seem very fair. What if, Marseille finish 4th? They're a really, really good team. Okay, maybe Turkey doesn't sort of matter as much because they've got good teams, but, if you're the champion of Belarus, you want to play games against similar competition, not like the best team from one of these leagues here that didn't manage to finish in the top. So in Portugal at this point in time, the group stage got 1, so whoever was 2nd in Portugal, so that's going to be Porto, Sporting or Benfica, they go through the league path. So they only play other teams that have qualified not as champions. So they would play the Marseille or the Ajax or the Anderlecht or, I don't know, Partizan from Serbia. Whereas Turkey, their team only would play against the champions of other countries. So Salzburg of Austria, Celtic, for example. That's the league path. Yeah, so let's have a look. Where is it? Turkey's there, so Champions Path. So they play against maybe Bodo Glimt, Copenhagen, Sparta Prague, something like that. It's to make it fairer, because there was a situation where teams, if you finished as the champion of your country, you just didn't make it to the Champions League because you ended up getting, I don't know, a really, really good team from one of these leagues who would just knock you out. So it's to try and get more champions in the Champions League, but at the same time, trying to get these better teams, half of them would actually qualify, to make sure that they get their revenue and their viewing figures and their sponsorship money for the better teams, even though those better teams only finished 4th, 3rd, 2nd in their league. So that's a little bit of an introduction into European football. At this point, I suppose I could very briefly... Is that the... Oh no. So I could talk a little bit about the Champions League. So qualification spots. Let's go to... There's no quick way of doing this, actually. Go to England, go to Man City. And then if they go to... schedule... Oh no, there's no help. Oh, I was trying to think of an easy way of doing it, but I'll just champions. So we can see that they're in the qualifying round at the minute, and these are the teams from different parts of Europe. There's a Champions path, and there's the league path that I explained earlier on. So, for example, you've got Bal against AEK of Greece in that one, but in the Champions you've got champions of Romania versus the champions of Armenia, for example. Okay, and then in this particular, I suppose it's not worth talking about it too much because it's changed now. But if you get into the group stage, then if you, at this point in time, if you finish 3rd, you would drop down to the Europa League. In the Europa League, if you finish 3rd, you drop down into the Conference League. And if you're 4th, you're just out altogether. And if you're obviously your top 2, you stay in the competition, go to the knockouts. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works. I hope that was a little bit of a helpful introduction, because everything works differently, and I know that South American, North American and Asian leagues work completely differently. The coefficiency doesn't matter as much. Asia is starting to follow the same way as Europe at the minute, but it hasn't always been that way, and they definitely don't have all teams. Asian Champions League. See what happens. No, it's not done that. AFC Champions League. So, for example, the coefficiencies aren't as important. They sort of decide how many... It is sort of the same thing. Let me just show you a little bit here. So if we do Asia, nation coefficiency, so Japan is the top, Saudi Arabia 2nd, South Korea 3rd, Iran, Qatar, Uzbekistan, UAE, China, Thailand, Iraq, and at this point in time, Australia were absolutely whooped for COVID. So they couldn't score any points, so they had been much, much higher. But then they dropped down because they weren't allowed to score any points because they couldn't travel. Which seemed quite unfair because the standard of their league is much better than quite a few of the ones above them. And then it says the qualification spaces. This has changed again. So again, take this with a pinch of salt because they've just introduced a completely different system in Asia all of a sudden. But at this point in time, it's a similar picture to Europe. So Saudi Arabia's top 3 made it straight into the group stage. 1 had a playoff, and so on and so forth. And there was a preliminary round for a couple of teams from lower, but if you look, some of these teams from 27th onwards, like Indonesia, just couldn't get into the Champions League. They just didn't have the opportunity to do so. I think the year after this, so maybe it was 2024, or maybe it was the year before, they did trial it, and letting everyone have a chance and have a qualification spot. But unlike Europe, not everyone is allowed, because the quality of their league, of their football, is allowed to enter into the Champions League, whereas in Europe, everyone technically could get in. So you could have a San Marinese club getting in. Obviously, it'd be completely bizarre if they did, but we have had all sorts of nations now get into the Conference League, like Armenian, Icelandic, Faroese, Welsh, Northern Irish. So we've had a massive number of different teams from different countries make it into international, European Cup competition. And there's a sort of sub thing called the Confederation Cup, which is a similar thing to the Europa League and Conference League, but it's not quite the same thing. And again, it's changed, so I'm not going to go into in great detail at the minute. But the Asian Champions League is really heavily towards the stronger nations in that particular region. Okay, I hope you've found this interesting and I haven't lost you. If there's anything else you want me to explain, or try to explain, then do let me know. If I've made a mistake, put it in the comment section. Like the video, comment, subscribe, join me on Patreon, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye 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 bye.